Ladies and gentlemen, I will be right with you shortly. Let me get Caleb on the line here. Share. Can somebody let me know if you actually hear me? And do you hear me? And check. There we go. Now we in business. And I have just now invited Caleb. He'll be joining us in just a minute. Apologize about the technical difficulties. That is on me. Again, my wireless is just not cooperating at the time. Caleb, are you there?
I am here, man.
And
I see your logo. I don't know if you have any video
Caleb.
You can't hear me still?
I can't hear you, unfortunately. No.
Hello.
I know you can't see me, but you can hear me.
I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Your volume is on?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I switched.
My volume's on. Everything's good to go.
Let me see if there's something else I can do real quick.
Yeah, everything's good to go on mine. Can you hear me?
And I unfortunately cannot hear you. Let's see.
Can you hear me now?
Let me see if this helps.
Yeah, because I can hear you. Can you hear me?
And
Hello?
Caleb, I just had to switch my my headphones. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can. Fan-fucking-tastic. It just, I had to switch over gear. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? We do apologize about the technical difficulty. Caleb could not get his shit together over on his side.
It was all me. That's who it was.
No, actually, you were right on time. And as was the situation last week, we had a little bit of Wi-Fi issues.
Yeah, I was shocked I even made it. Like I was telling you, I got out of work late, and then I was driving home, and there was a crackhead in the middle of the street in an intersection. He was running around, and then he walks up. A lady, another fellow tweaker friend of his, runs up, and he pulls up her shirt, and you see her long hanging crackhead boobies.
Nice.
And so that was my trip home. It was probably more interesting than this podcast is going to be.
It was definitely more interesting than this podcast is going to be.
Yeah. All right.
Let's let that one hang for a second. You know what I mean?
Just do a couple of pregnant pauses.
Yes, absolutely. So, for you guys at home that are listening to this episode, Caleb and I are going to, by the way, this is Caleb Miles of Caleb Says Stuff joining me on the podcast another week. Thank you for coming by.
Yeah, man. So do we have any video on this one, or am I just staring at a picture, checking out myself for no reason?
You are looking at yourself for no reason. We are doing audio only this week. I have a beautiful graphics package set up for Caleb and me to use when I do get this situation fixed. It looks like I'm going to have to invest in upping my internet connection. Anyways, that's
a must, man. Well,
yeah, it seems like it, because we're going to have, I mean, I really enjoy doing this. I don't know how many weeks in a row you're going to stick around while I'm like, fuck, dude, one more minute, just one more minute. So we're gonna talk a little bit about what we watched this week before we get into anything. We're gonna talk about a couple of kind of major movie news headlines, and then we are gonna talk about a subject that hasn't been discussed since 2006. It is the Asian horror cinema subgenre. So we're gonna get into all of that. But first, Caleb, you been watching anything interesting this week?
I saw Tag, which I absolutely loved.
Oh, good.
Yeah, shockingly good, to the point where might end up being one of my more favorite films of the year. Like, that good. I absolutely loved it, which is rare for me for a comedy. And then I watched Queer Eye Season 2. Queer Eye Season 1 was the only thing I'd given a 10 out of 10 to on my channel, and it's a reality show, so that shocked me.
Yeah.
Season 2's all right. It's kind of more what I expected season 1, and without all the charm and the touch of season 1.
See, and I heard season 1 was exceptional. I never really thought to look at that show. I mean, shit, there's so much on that I don't have time to watch, that I've never got around to it, but I've been kind of interested to check out the first season of that because I have heard so many positive things.
Oh, dude, I cried probably every episode, like ugly face, full on cried the first season. It was that good. Yeah, I was shocked by it. This season is more what you expect it to be. It's a bunch of gay dudes making up straight dudes, and you're like, okay, it's fun. Don't get me wrong, it's still fun. It's still enjoyable. I just didn't like get the feels ever.
So, I mean, is the format different in the first season, or I mean, it's just done in a way that's more touching?
Yeah, in this season, I don't know. So the first season felt a little more like a self-help thing. Like, they really helped out these guys who were just down on their luck, whether it be relationship-wise, career-wise, all of the above. These guys who just kind of needed a help in right direction, and it felt a little more like building a person up from the ground. This has some of that, but this feels more just like a makeover show. Like, it doesn't have quite as much heart. It's still good, but it's just, I don't know if it's just me, because after seeing a whole season and building it up in my head, it just didn't hit me. But I literally didn't even like tear up at all this entire season. And I cried almost every episode, the one before. So I don't know. There's something missing. And my wife felt the same way too. She was like, yeah, it's okay.
Really? Okay. So that's pretty cool. And with Tag, I kind of have the same question. Is it just a straight up funny ass comedy, or is there dramatic and kind of emotional beats in it as well?
So Tag is one of the funniest movies I've seen in years. Like, it's downright hilarious. But underneath it, what I enjoyed more is there is some dramatic moments, and I feel like it really captures male friendship pretty well, because you know how male friendship is absurd at times, and it can be just so dumb, but there's also like this true brotherhood and this true love there. I feel like they capture that pretty well, which is nice, because a lot of movies that cover male friendship, I feel like, only concentrate on the absurdity and the more slapstick side of it. And don't get me wrong, that's a huge part of friendships, but I think they kind of gloss over like how it is like a brotherhood and a friendship. And this did it really well while being a straight up comedy. Like, it's more of a comedy than anything, but there's that underlining tone that I just enjoy.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I've been interested to check that out. I think it's wild that Jeremy Renner broke both of his arms on in production of it, and they put green sleeves on him and keyed in his arms through a good chunk of the movie. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, I heard about it before, and I looked for it the entire movie, and I couldn't tell. So that is some of the best work I've seen with visual effects. You can't tell at all.
That's wild. That's just fucking crazy to think about. And I heard the cast saying, like, Jeremy Renner is the only one out of all of us that actually is an action star, and he's the one who gets fucked up on the set of a movie where we're playing tag.
And it's funny because you can tell they film his scenes like an action scene. Like, oh yeah, it's pretty amazing. They film his parts way more action scene. Like, the way he breaks down a game of tag is pretty funny.
So I caught just kind of dramatically switching gears real quick. I saw the penultimate episode of Westworld, and This season has just kind of sucked. I think the first season proposed all of these huge ideas, and I was just really curious to see where it was going to go. And I feel like it just is still proposing big ideas, but it just is kind of spinning its wheels. And I don't like what a couple of the characters did. It didn't feel true to their characters. So I don't know. I'm not feeling it.
I haven't seen any episodes of it. Is it kind of have like the J.J. Abrams problem, like where it just keeps introducing more questions and doesn't really pay off?
I think that's a very fair comparison. I think that the Lost comparison is very fair. I mean, the production value and the cast alone elevate it from a lot of what television has to offer, but I just feel that the storytelling it just feels like it's roaming around in the dark with its hands in front of it, trying to feel its way around it and know where to go. And I don't know. I don't know. Maybe this final episode of the season is going to paint this really intricate picture that I was missing the whole time. And that would make it worth it. But right now it doesn't feel like it's got a tidy little end to it, you know?
Yeah, it's one of those ones I keep wanting to check out. I've only seen the movie, the old movie years ago, and people have recommended it to me, but I don't know. It's something that I will get around to eventually, but it's not like high importance for me.
So I saw a stellar film. I want to say maybe it was Sunday evening, and it's called Three Billboards Over Ebbing, Missouri.
Oh, so is it as good as everybody says it is?
I absolutely loved it. I talked to a friend, I want to say it was earlier today, that was just like, oh, it was yesterday. And he was like, yeah, it was all right, but I didn't like the ending. And I think it was a 2017 film. So it came out the same year as a couple other movies that I really liked, but I would say it's in my top 5 of 2017. It was very, very well done. And I'm a massive fan of Woody Harrelson and Sam Rockwell in particular, and they both just fucking crush in this movie.
I think Sam Rockwell is severely underrated, in my opinion. I think Woody Harrelson's great too, but I think Sam Rockwell is one of those actors that doesn't ever get quite enough credit. I don't know if you ever saw Moon with him.
Oh man, stellar movie.
Oh, it's phenomenal. He is so amazing, and I mean, just a lot of things. Even like Galaxy Quest, he's funny, and then I mean, there's just honestly, even in a bad movie, he's usually good in it.
Yeah, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind is a fantastic movie that not a lot of people talk about these days.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen that in a long time.
Yeah, it was a good one
since it came out. Yeah, it's a solid movie.
So
excellent. I want to see Right with Mr. Right with him and Andrew Kendrick. I bought it and I never watched it.
Yeah, I actually kind of remember that one. Sometimes it's hard to justify going and spending the money on movies that don't feel, you know, very cinematic in nature. And a lot of times I can talk myself into like, oh, it's a comedy, I'll just wait for it to come out, you know, digital download or to rent it from a Redbox or whatever the thing is. But then with, you know, subscription services like MoviePass and things like that, it allows consumers the opportunity to be able to go and see smaller movies and movies that they may not have necessarily seen. But MoviePass has been a strange business model, to say the least. And not only that, but they've been fairly shady with their practices, and their customer service is awful. So I actually stopped subscribing just a couple of months back, and I heard just today that AMC is going to be launching a subscription service for $19.95 a month. You get 3 movies a week, including IMAX and 3D. You can go to repeat viewings, and you get discounts at the concession stand. It's a new Stubs service, and it kicks off on June 26th. Caleb, are you going to do that?
Oh no, I'm very happy with MoviePass, and I don't go to AMC. There's like none really that close to me. Like the one I go to is always Cinemark, and I always like it too because I go to Alamo Drafthouse sometimes, and you know it's just kind of nice because when one theater isn't getting a movie, then I can go to another.
Yeah, sure. sure. And all I have here in the area is AMC's. So it seems like a great value to me. Right now I am a Stubbs Premier member, and it's so fucking dope to just be able to like walk up in front of everybody in the line and you know, get all your concessions upsized for free. We pay like $15 a year for it. So
oh, that's not bad.
No, it's not. And I think $20 a month to not have to wait to get into the parking lot to purchase your tickets kind of makes it worth it. You can actually reserve them ahead of time. And there's just a couple of things convenience wise, like if I have a problem, I can just actually speak to a manager there at the theater. So I'm thinking this is a win for me. But yeah, with your situation, it seems like sticking with Movie Pass is going to be the way to go. Have you ever had issues with the card?
Never, not once. Yeah, never had any issues with it. It's worked fine for me. So I've never had to talk to customer service because it's never been an issue. You know, I check in, select the card, works.
See, and I was a happy fucking member there for about 2 years. And what happened is I canceled my subscription there for maybe a month, and then I resubscribed. They gave me a new card number, which I think was associated with a different account. So something got cross-pollinated and it fucked up, and I wasn't able to use the card. And I tried for weeks, if not months, to contact somebody. I kept using their little chat option on the mobile app. So my experience soured. However, before that, I was a very happy user. So I guess as long as everything is smooth, then there's no reason to have any concerns about that.
So pretty much you're saying never ever cancel it, because then you're going to get screwed if you try to come back.
Yes, absolutely. Maybe that's the takeaway. Maybe that's the takeaway. We'll see. So real quick, I didn't even put it on the docket, but what are your thoughts on this John Gotti movie, Gotti, with John Travolta in it, using a marketing tactic where they say basically critics are a bunch of trolls sitting behind keyboards?
I don't know. I mean, I actually think from a marketing standpoint, I kind of love it.
Sure.
You know, because as someone who is a critic, there are, I think you would even agree, there are a lot of trolls behind keyboards.
Oh, sure.
It's kind of unreal. I mean, even just like with the rumor mills, I mean, you see it with these movies where it's like, this person dropped out. Oh, there's reshoots. And you're like, yeah, there's reshoots. Do you not understand how movies are made? There's reshoots in every movie. Yeah, like, and there's a lot of this like clickbaity troll type stuff that I kind of wish would die out of the movie, quote unquote journalism. It's not really journalism, but I kind of like that they're punching back a little bit.
I'm a little trollish myself, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I feel like you know, I'm pretty hard on movies, especially for somebody that doesn't watch them. So I mean, that doesn't make them, excuse me, I watch the fuck out of them. That's the whole point here. But I feel
I wouldn't consider you trolling. I would say you state an honest opinion, that's fine, but you don't do like clickbaity random things. Like a lot of these are the same sites that they'll be like, this actor dropped out, this person did this, like really making a big deal out of, you know, oh, this person came in to re-edit the movie or reshoot, and you're like, yeah, that's pretty standard practice for a lot of films. This is filmmaking, you know. And I feel like there's a lot of that.
You're coming from. It's almost more that that they are focusing on the negative sides of the production, things that are going on behind the scenes, and sensationalizing it as if it's something that is outside the norm. So I agree with that. I feel like it's, like you said, it's clever marketing. I do feel like it pretty much ensures that moving forward, critics are going to be even more critical of that particular you know, studio or whoever's behind it. I think that Netflix was somehow associated with distributing it or helping promote it. I don't know exactly the details on that. Did you hear anything about it?
No, but I bet you're right. I bet they do start punching back even harder because they're a bunch of trolls behind keyboards. That's what they do.
Sure.
You know, and like I think they're going to prove the company right by the way they react, because there is this thing that and we've talked about it numerous times, I can't stand in movie journalism, where it's like, there's this loyalty. There's, oh, I hate this production studio. Oh, I hate this franchise. Oh, I hate this. And then they just attack things. And like my thing is, for me personally, if I had a big site, like a big site with multiple journalists, and I had someone who, okay, like me, I'm not, well, bring the Marvel example. I'm not a Marvel fan as far as the movies are concerned, really. Well, if you and me were at a website, I would
trash.
It's because I'm the worst. But if you and me were at a website, I'd be like, Jeremy, this is your beat. You go ahead and review Marvel movies because you're going to bring more value to it. That's why I actually stopped doing Marvel reviews. It wasn't because it was because I didn't feel like I didn't want to be a keyboard warrior. I didn't want to be a troll who just attacked things. And if you kind of know where I'm coming from, most likely, I mean, I gave Black Panther a 7, so I wasn't too harsh on that. But like most likely, I'm probably not going to like it. So what's the value of me putting up a thing just to shit talk it or shit talk it every day?
Yeah,
and I feel like that's what a lot of modern is. Modern is just shit talking.
I definitely did trailer reactions there for a little bit to all the big shit that was coming out, and I never really enjoyed it because, for one, I'm not a very emotive TV watcher. You know what I mean? That's one big thing. And then also I just felt like I was doing it for more movies that I wasn't excited about than I was excited about, because I tend to, I do enjoy the Marvel movies, and I will, go and see the big tentpole films sometimes. But a lot of times just they're DOA for me. I'm like, I'm not excited about seeing The Mummy because this isn't the Mummy movie that I want to see. So,
and also too, going on tangent again, the emotive people, no one's that emotive and that's why I don't like trailer reactions, because like and maybe it makes me a crotchety old man, which I am, but I don't understand these people who watch people and it's clearly an act that they're just like, oh my god, did you see whatever in that movie? And you're like, yeah, it's Dracula, you knew Dracula was going to be in the movie, you're really that. It's all bullshit. It's all playing up for the camera. And I don't really like doing that. I like to more just be me. I like people to know. I feel like you and me both do the same. You've talked to me off camera, and I've talked to you off camera. We're kind of just who we are.
Yeah.
And I like that. I think that's, to me, more what I gravitate towards. And even when I did like the Venom trailer reaction, I didn't do it while watching it. I actually just did a quick reaction to it afterwards where I talked about it. So more like a review of the trailer. And to me, that's the type of content I consume. I don't know. I feel like reactions are for like, I think I'm too old, honestly. I feel like reactions are for younger people.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And, it might be kind of revealing a lot, but I prefer the podcast method because it puts an emphasis on just, being candid and being honest as far as your real thoughts and not having to put on this persona,
No, when I listen to stuff, I listen to podcasts. That's why my favorite content I do is actually the stuff I do with you. This is more something I would listen to than my own YouTube channel, which is not the greatest promotion for my YouTube channel, but this is more what I find it more interesting to hear a dialogue back and forth than me just preaching the gospel to a camera. I just think it's a little more interesting personally. That's the type of stuff. The only person I watch who has that format is Philip DeFranco. That is literally the only person I watch for that format.
Yeah, he's fantastic. So I think a lot of the problem with big budget tent poles, and I mean this isn't anything new, but this idea of 4-quadrant filmmaking and how movies have to be incredibly spelled out to audiences because of language barriers and various things. And not only that, but because they're trying to market them to children as well as adults. And I think that the Chinese market in particular has had a huge impact on the way that movies are being made, just because they're about to become the biggest market for film. And amidst a lot of I mean, they're massive, and they are definitely have a hunger for it at this point. So we're going to see a dramatic change here coming up shortly. And something that I think is really fascinating is that China has had restrictions on their movies. Basically, they have no official rating system, and the country's got notoriously strict censors and only permit the release of films deemed acceptable to audiences of all ages. And just now in 2017, Beijing actually started attaching a parental warning to films considered an adult tone. But the horror market has previously not really been explored in China until now, because Jason Blum of Blumhouse is teaming up with Tang Media Partners to make horror movies for China. So what do you think about this idea of taking the Blumhouse model of filmmaking over to China and trying to market that?
I think it could be very, very well done, but granted, I'm kind of bitter. I loved Hong Kong film. I don't like Chinese film now that Hong Kong's gone back to mainland. I think the quality of movies has severely decreased.
Sure.
I'm not talking actually like budget. I'm talking actual quality filmmaking. Hong Kong cinema is one of my favorite things of all time. I've probably seen thousands of them. And it's sad because I kind of don't watch Chinese films anymore because they've gotten so big budget, mindless, dumb films. And you're seeing that, like you said, absolutely in American cinema right now. There is that pandering. Let's cut down on the dialogue. Let's put jokes that are a little more universal that we can easily translate. Disney's a big person of this. You can definitely tell Disney is going for the Chinese market.
Sure.
Paramount's another one. Paramount, you'll see a lot of what is it, H Brothers or whatever at the beginning of a lot of their films because they're actually helping produce them now. So I think that ultimately is going to hurt films. I'm a firm believer of I want people to make art, not just, and I agree, all entertainment is art, but I want people to more make what they want to make rather than a mathematical interpretation of the art to what will be popular.
Well, and that kind of raises an interesting question: is are the horror movies that Blumhouse put out over in China going to be more family friendly, or is this going to open a door for more extreme Chinese cinema? You know, and just to kind of add a little bit to that, A Quiet Place, produced by Platinum Dunes, was released in China because obviously it's not a very graphically violent movie. There's not excessive language. It's rated PG-13. It grossed 33.7, which I think is around the budget. Happy Death Day was a PG-13 release from Blumhouse that also was allowed. It made 9.6. And then the film The Boy that came out back in 2016, $2.5 million. These are all fairly safe horror movies. So is that what we think that they are shooting for?
If they're smart, they would not be doing that. Hopefully,
yeah,
they're going to try to talk some sense into them, because I think the fact that they're a starved market, especially in the age of the internet, people in China are watching these films whether they're getting a theatrical release or not. They're getting around to more hardcore horror films, whether they're watching on bootleg subtitles, even if that's the way they're doing it. They're right. Getting around to them. So they're a starved market. So I would like to think they would be at least smart enough for a money standpoint to go ahead and go after that market. But the Chinese filmmaking model doesn't leave me too hopeful, to be honest.
And it's like I know that there's going to be Chinese production companies involved as well, and that is actually going to be extremely helpful because a lot of the lore and a lot of the specifically Asian and Far Eastern influenced aspects of horror would need to be incorporated, because a lot of the stuff that's specifically American is going to get lost in translation. So I mean, I don't know why they couldn't do a little bit of both. That would be the obviously the most ideal thing, but we've seen what a success horror films have had in America, especially in the last 2 years. So I totally understand why they're doing it. I think from a business perspective, it's just more proof that Jason Blum is a fucking genius.
Oh, I think he's been so wonderful for the horror film industry. Even though he's had a lot of misfires, I feel like he's definitely been a big pusher in the resurgence of it. So hopefully he can kind of take that model and throw it into China. And I would love to see some good Chinese horror films. There's a couple of ones that I've absolutely loved with like Anthony Wong and stuff back in the day that were pretty creepy. That I would like to see them take that model, but those were Hong Kong films when they pushed the boundaries a little more. So if they go more back to that, I think it'd be interesting.
Yeah, and what's interesting also is that they're going back and thinking about the amount of movies that I've seen. The only Chinese films that I can really pinpoint that I know I've seen were Jet Li films, Hero, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, etc. All very good movies, just a very specific style. I think they were mostly all done by the same director. Not sure who it is. And then obviously I saw a bit of John Woo's stuff. Like you said, Hong Kong action movies in particular. I watched quite a bit of those. So China is certainly lacking in the horror department, but what's fascinating is kind of as a answer to that, neighboring Asian countries such as South Korea and Japan really were able to explore the hardcore, and then not necessarily that, but really able to explore horror in their respective countries. And I think some of the best horror films have actually come out of those two countries in particular. So we're going to talk a little bit about Asian horror films, and probably mostly Japanese and Korean, but maybe some others will come up. Caleb,
one of my favorite horror
ahead.
films is a Chinese horror film, actually.
Okay.
So, and I say horror film, it's a horror comedy. It's actually the movie that heavily inspired Shaun of the Dead. We probably wouldn't have got Shaun of the Dead quite the way we did had we not gotten Biozombie. Biozombie is an absolutely excellent film about these two kind of fuck up loser guys who stumble across a zombie virus that's being smuggled into the country inside an energy drink can. And through a series of events, they unleash a zombie virus, and they're in a mall, and they work at a bootleg VCD store, and they're trying to like pick up girls and get laid while zombies are around. It's an absolutely brilliant, one of my favorite zombie films of all time.
Well, that's just now gone on to my must-watch list because I mean that sounds like a cool premise, and I didn't even know it existed. Kind of what got me into the genre was probably what introduced lots of American audiences into the genre, and it was probably around, it was the early 2000s, maybe 2004, when we got our American remake, the Gore Verbinski. What the fuck's his last name? Verbinski?
I've not even attempted that.
Gore Verbinski. You know who I'm talking about.
Verbinski. I have no idea.
He directed The Ring, and that was a fairly good movie. It is PG-13, but I thought it was a fairly effective little horror film. I think today's standards have kind of skewed it to where maybe it's not as great as it was at one point in time, especially because of how many imitators came out afterwards. But that shit stuck with me for a little while, man.
I never liked it, but I saw the Ringu before I saw Ring.
Okay.
So I saw the original before I saw the Ring, and I wasn't that impressed with the original either. Like, I don't know, the whole like, and this became a trope for a while in Asian horror, but the whole like long black hair, traditional yokai sort of look where it's like long black hair, pale girl. That thing just doesn't creep me out. I don't know why. It just does nothing for me. But that thing is definitely influenced still to this day a little bit of Western horror. It's kind of amazing the fingerprints that's left on the industry.
Well, and I went and watched Ringu afterwards, and I think I prefer the American version to the, you know, but it's a production quality thing more than anything.
I would definitely say the American's better. I absolutely would. I think I didn't like the original either, but I think it was just seeing it and not being impressed and then watching a remake. I think it kind of tainted my view, so I kind of went in with an already tainted view.
Yeah, it's totally understandable. And you're right that look of the female, I think Yuri is what the traditional, or you know what the traditional Japanese ghost is, and it was already a thing by the time The Grudge came out, and Ju-on I actually did see before, because right after that happened, it kicked off a big fascination for America in general with these Japanese horror films. So I went and started exploring kind of the big the big imports, the ones that just kind of gained traction abroad and things like that. And I thought Ju-on was extremely effective. It's something about the contortionist movements and the way the ghost looks coming down the stairs. I think that in Ju-on they are Onryu, which are evil spirits, right?
I believe that's right. That movie, I always say, I did the reverse of this. I actually saw the American version first, then the Japanese version. And I've always said those, I feel like if you cut those two movies together, you get one hell of a horror film.
Sure.
Because to me, like there were parts of the story that you actually, it was a weird way of doing it. If you watch those movies like pretty back to back, they both cover different parts of the story that actually fill in cues. And it's a little almost weird because they kind of coexist while being remakes at the same time. But the Cat Kid was, for me, the standout of it.
Sure, and it is weird. The Grudge, I wouldn't say it's a disjointed movie. It's an interesting approach to the narrative. It actually is about more than one storyline simultaneously. So I like that. There's something about the lo-fi aesthetic of the digital cameras that Japanese movies at that time were shot on, that it almost gave it a more Veretti feel. It just looked, I don't know, more real or more like a documentary because of the kind of low rent production quality.
Yeah, that was an era too. It was like everything was that style. I've watched so many of those type of horror films that they've all kind of blurred together at this time because they were all very derivative of one another after that era.
Yeah, absolutely. But then there were other movies that came out, like Takashi Miike is a very influential and prolific filmmaker that's actually worked across several genres, including like epics and stuff like that. But his horror films are incredibly effective. I would consider Ichi the Killer to be a horror film in a lot of ways.
I would consider a big chunk of his stuff to be. So Ichi the Killer, I would definitely say is. There's an anime too. A lot of people don't realize Ichi the Killer Zero. It's pretty weird too. Yeah, it's pretty weird. But the Audition is one of my favorite horror films of all time.
I'm glad you brought it around to that, because I absolutely concur about that film. And there are some truly terrifying moments in it. But what I like about it also is there's this kind of undercurrent of gallows humor, especially during the auditioning process at the beginning of the movie, you know?
No, that movie. So I heard this. I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard that movie was made on a dare. One of his friends, who's also director, was like, "Hey, I bet you can't make a normal movie because all this stuff, you know, Dead or Alive up to that point, and Ichi the Killer, and those kind of bizarre films." And then I heard, I don't know if it's true, that he was dared to make a normal film, and Audition's what he came up with. If so, that's pretty amazing.
Close.
That's the true story.
Yeah, very close to a normal movie. Man, the most iconic shot to me, I know a lot of people like the kitty, 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 kitty. And,
that part's so terrifying.
And then the piano wire scene is pretty gruesome, but she's sitting there just waiting for what seems like probably 48 hours straight, and all of a sudden the phone rings, and she's just been sitting there the entire time. Probably didn't blink the whole time, and the phone rings, and then all of a sudden it's out of focus in the background, and you see this fucking almost like a body bag just start convulsing, and you're like, what the fuck just happened to this movie, right?
That part is absolutely terrifying. Like the first time I saw that, that's one of the few movies that I really like disturbed me to my core. Like I bring that up all the time when people bring up disturbing movies. I'm like, that to me is that, and Feed, the 2005, I think it is, are like my two most disturbing movies.
I've seen some pretty grim shit over the years. But as far as Japanese movies go, I think we've touched on the real big ones. I'm sure that there's some that we're missing, and you guys in the comment section, feel free to let us know some of your favorites as well. Caleb, what you got?
I would say Uzumaki is another one that was a pretty big one, based on a manga.
The Spirals movie?
Yeah,
Oh yeah, that
Yeah.
one's really cool.
I say that was another one that was actually pretty big. I was lukewarm on it, and then some people argue that Great Yokai War, also Takashi Miike, is one of those that is a kids horror film. I say it's more of an epic with yokai in it, but that's an interesting film. I still don't know where I land on it.
See, and I haven't heard of that one. That's another one that I need to check out. There were some I think it wasn't Seven Samurai. It was like 97 Samurai. I don't remember what it's called. I need to put it down in the comment section, but it was like an old feudal Japan epic that he made several years after Audition and those films. It was probably like a 2010, 2012 release, and it was very, very well done. But if I'm not mistaken, the dude has like 100 directing credits, which is just fucking baffling.
Oh yeah, he just churns out movies, and he's one of those people. For me, he is a love it or hate it director. Like I either like blown away and think it's very well done, or I think it's unwatchable garbage. But when you when you're dropping that many movies, I mean, what do you kind of expect?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's kind of transition over into South Korean films. I think that South Korean films are my favorite in the world that aren't American films. And obviously, it's just because of the sheer volume of American films that I've seen. Britain makes great films as well, but I think that because we've had a presence in South Korea ever since the Korean War and many, many years ago, I don't even know exactly, but we have really had a major influence on their music, on their fashion, and on their love of film. And they spare no expense when it comes to filmmaking just in general. I mean, you look at movies like The Host, and there are several, Train to Busan more recently, which is a horror film, but had a exceptionally large budget for the kind of movie that it was, and you can see it in every frame. But I think that South Korea they have a close blood connection with Hollywood cinema. And what I've always liked about their horror films in particular is there's kind of two distinct sides of it. One is very extreme revenge based horror films, and some are supernatural, others are not at all. And then on the flip side of that, they've got these very atmospheric ghost stories that tend to have lots of psychological undercurrents to them. So
Yeah,
would you say those are both pretty fair assessments?
I've always said so. For me, South Korea, not necessarily in horror, but South Korea for crime dramas kind of replaced Hong Kong for me. Since Hong Kong now their Chinese films are I think their horror. I mean, their crime dramas have taken a hit. But South Korea, to me, I feel like if you took China a little for the horror specifically, if you took Japan and you took America and you threw it in a blender, I feel like that's kind of what you get. It's a very like weird melting pot of cinema.
A great analogy, yeah.
Like it's kind of an interesting thing. I feel like if you threw all three of those, they have aspects of it that it gives a style that's very eclectic, uniquely its own, while still being almost unoriginal because it's so eclectic that I really enjoy it. It's different.
There's a lot of times there's a very offbeat sense of humor in them, and I think there's a lot of overlap between these crime thrillers and crime dramas and horror. And one that I think instantly comes to my mind is Old Boy, right?
Old Boy. Old Boy was another one I saw years and years before the American version.
Yes, I never saw the American version. I could give a shit about that because the hammer scene in the first film, it's all in one take. It's like probably a 6-minute fight, and it's not great looking by today's standard, but the choreography is so impressive, and the fact that they are able to maintain this for as long as they do, you can see that obviously a couple of the punches are pulled, but I just think that it was pretty innovative filmmaking.
Oh, that scene is one of my favorite scenes in cinema. Like I'm lukewarm on the movie, but that scene, in fact, Daredevil TV show had a scene that is very, very, very heavily influenced by that.
Yes, the whole Marvel hallway fight sequence owes a huge debt of gratitude to Old Boy. That's a great point. And the story is a little convoluted. It's a little mean-spirited, but obviously I think that's that gallows humor that I was referring to with the Japanese movies earlier, is it's just this really heavy sense of irony, almost like a Shakespearean tragedy kind of thing. But Old Boy is part one of the Revenge trilogy, which was all directed by Chan Park Wook or Chan Woo Park. It's one or the other, and he's probably the premier South Korean filmmaker in general. And I think that go ahead.
Oh no, I think I've seen like 2 of the 3. I don't think I've seen, because there's Lady Vengeance, Old Boy,
Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance.
Oh, I have seen all 3. Yeah, I have seen them all.
Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance sits in the middle, and I thought it was a very good movie. A very good movie as well. They're all obviously playing on this idea of violence begetting more violence doesn't necessarily equal revenge, and I think that's something that's just ripe to explore. There's another movie that he directed called Thirst. It's a vampire movie starring the same guy from Old Boy, and he plays like a preacher, and he falls in love with the vampire. Have you seen that one?
No, I haven't. It's been on my list because he's one of those directors I actually don't love that much. I think Old Boy ruined it for me, even though it's visually beautiful. The whole moral of the story I took away from Old Boy is like, well, incest is okay as long as you're in love. You know, that's kind of how it ends up being. Yeah, I was like, well, that's a weird moral for a story, you know. But as far as like visually, he's a very interesting director to me.
Yeah, absolutely. There's another movie that came out. I'm not sure if you saw this one, but I think it kind of falls in between the categories we were talking about. It's called I Saw the Devil.
I Saw the Devil, I have seen.
What did you think about that one?
I liked I Saw the Devil. Is it same director?
No, I don't think it is. I do think there's similarities, but I don't think it is. Let me pull it up real quick.
Because I was like, it has that feel, but not quite that feel. So I'm like, I didn't know if it was just more of a South Korea sort of thing, or if it was like the same director. But it's definitely influenced by the Vengeance trilogy, you know?
Yes, 100%. And I like it's actually stars the guy from Old Boy. Imagine that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that guy is just a huge actor over in South Korea. But I Saw the Devil. I thought, again, really dark sense of humor, really just disturbing, you know, all the way around. I think it's more representative of the extreme side of things. And there's a knifing that takes place in a car that is one of the fucking craziest things I've ever seen in a horror movie.
South Korea just does some interesting thing. Totally, before I forget, a Japanese film I do need to plug real quick that just popped into my head when you were talking. That is a sci-fi horror adventure. I get thrown in all 3 of these categories. Battle Royale. Did you ever see that?
Oh yeah, dude. I'm glad you brought that one up and that we missed it. That's a great and very influential movie.
Yeah, definitely. Hunger Games owes a lot to that and Running Man, you know?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I think that it worked on a satirical level. It also worked on a, kind of a political statement. So that was one that I really enjoyed. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, also from Japan, I'm glad you jumped back over there real quick, because there's a movie called Cold Fish about a man that owns a fish store. You know, they sell fish and aquariums and all of that kind of stuff. And he meets a bigger, more successful fish aquarium guy who's got this big, beautiful store, and kind of falls into the allure of this business owner who ends up being just a complete sadistic psychopath. And it's real fucked up and real over the top, but that's kind of like I suck those movies out. So yeah, that's one that if you get a chance to watch it and you're just in the mood to watch something just totally batshit crazy, Cold Fish is a good one.
Another one that is based on an anime that I would consider I would probably call it a horror superhero film, is probably the best way to describe it, is Tokyo Ghoul, which actually ended up being one of my favorite films of last year. It's phenomenal. There's parts of it that are directed like a horror film. There's parts of it that are directed like a big budget superhero movie, and it's kind of both at the same time, which I really enjoyed. It's typical Japanese, where if you're unfamiliar with Japanese cinema, you know, it's going to be overacted. They're going to be a little melodramatic in scenes. That's just kind of par for the course. But I absolutely loved that last year.
Yeah. I haven't had a chance to check it out yet, but I've heard just so many great things about it. So I need to sit down and check that out. Did you see Train to Busan?
No, I own it, and I saw his Psychokinesis, the movie that was he directed after it, his superhero film.
Uh-huh.
But I still haven't seen Train to Busan, which is sad because I'm like a huge zombie guy. I can't believe I haven't seen it.
It's very good. I was a little bit like like every time a zombie thing comes out, I'm like, I'm fucking done. Like, how could they possibly have another fresh take on the zombie movie? And time again, I'm pleasantly surprised or impressed by the way they just slightly change the angle, just because it's so right for social commentary. So I do like the zombie genre. I think Train to Busan is fun to watch.
Zombie films in general are like one of my go-to. I will eat up zombie films whether they're garbage or not. I've probably literally, not even exaggerating, probably seen 300-400 zombie films. It's ridiculous. Yeah, I've sucked out every random one, from like Dead Meat, where it was the mad cow disease, people from eating beef go insane, to like Severed, to oh god, a bio zombie, which I just mentioned earlier. There's a Japanese one that's where they play baseball, zombie baseball or something like that. It's yeah. I literally, if there's a zombie in it, I'll watch it.
There's a Norwegian one called Dead Snow with Nazi zombies in it.
Yeah, I've seen Dead Snow.
That's a pretty funny one. So probably I don't know for sure. It's always hard to rank favorites and shit, but one of my favorites of South Korean cinema is a movie called A Tale of Two Sisters. And it does use a lot of, it probably established several of the tropes that we saw in Korean horror films afterwards. And you know, I'm sure it's influenced heavily by other things that came out, but it's actually the highest grossing.
To me, reminded me very heavily influenced by Japanese cinema.
Sure. Yeah. You can definitely see that. I think that there was a very lavish production design in it. A lot of very symmetrical cinematography. It had this like offbeat, artsy look to it, which I think is pretty true to South Korean cinema. And I just love how macabre the whole thing is. It's like this really interesting ghost story, and then kind of like Sixth Sense or The Others or something. It totally pulls the rug out from under you at the end.
Oh, I love movies that can do that. You know, if you can throw me off while watching a horror film, it's one of my favorite things. Like, I don't know if you ever saw, it's an American movie, but Hamilton, I think, is The Hamiltons.
I haven't.
So Hamiltons is a super low budget movie. It's about like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre type of family, and that's literally all I want to say about it, because anything else will ruin it.
Well, damn, dude, will you stop naming movies that I have to watch?
I'm always good for random obscure stuff that no one talks about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna have to go back and listen to it, because I done forgot everyone we've talked about so far. But we have.
I'll text you a whole list, man.
Hell yeah. So I think that a movie that owes a lot to A Tale of Two Sisters, and I know that there's several out there, but we know that Martin Scorsese was keeping his eye on Japanese cinema and Asian cinema in general, because he did The Departed, which is a remake of Infernal Affair, which is a Japanese horror movie. I feel that Shutter Island owes a lot to A Tale of Two Sisters.
I could definitely see that. I never thought of that, but heavily, yeah, I would definitely say. And Infernal Affairs, I got to go on a tangent, because the Infernal Affairs trilogy is one of my favorite trilogies of all time.
Okay.
So I'm a huge Andy Lau fan. I'm a huge, Eric Tsang's in it. I think Anthony Wong's in it. Like, there's so many good. That was from that good era of Hong Kong cinema,
right?
Infernal Affairs, where it was like everything was just so good. That, yeah, you had brought it up. I'm like, I have to say, if someone hasn't seen Infernal Affairs, watch the entire trilogy. It's brilliant. It jumps around in time within the trilogy. Like, the second one's a prequel, but it's actually good. It's just phenomenal.
I only saw the first one. As a matter of fact, I didn't even know there was a trilogy. So that's fantastic. Yeah, I think that what struck me about Shutter Island in particular was the way that it ended. I felt like that reveal at the end was just so I mean, it's just the most devastating fucking ending that it could possibly have, and both of them share that in common, you know. So, I really like A Tale of Two Sisters. I think that that's one that if you are a horror fan, you should definitely seek that one out. Are there any other ones
I
we
think
should touch on?
as far Korean is one of those things I need to get into because that's actually kind of one of my blind spots. Like Chinese and Japanese are were always more one. I know there's a Chinese film. Oh, another one that some people call it a horror, it is not. It's a romantic comedy with a ghost in it, but I would still recommend it. Is My Left Eye Sees Ghost. So I love Chinese rom-coms. They're absolutely amazing.
Uh-huh.
So My Left Eye Sees Ghost is a very different Chinese. I've heard it gets thrown um into horror films. It's not. But then plus the Chinese vampire just in general is something I absolutely love. There's Vampire Effect that stars, it was produced by Jackie Chan. It has the music group Twins in it. So Vampire Effect is a really good movie, or Twins Effect, but it's Vampire Effect is the first one. Um, the there's a whole trilogy. Oh my God, of Chinese vampire films that's amazing. There's Chinese Ghost Story, which is wonderful, but there's a whole famous trilogy of Chinese vampire movies that I cannot think of that are just amazing.
See, now that is my blind spot is kind of Chinese cinema. I do know some of the Hong Kong stuff, but not a lot. I mean, nowhere near to the extent that you do. It doesn't sound like. I remember Dracula versus the seven golden ninjas or some shit.
Dracula versus, I know which one you're talking about. I've seen it. A Dracula versus, it's gonna bug me. I'm gonna figure out what that is with the vampire one. There's a trilogy of them that are absolutely, with the jumping vampires, where they jump and they stab you with their thing, and it's so brilliant. It's on the tip of my tongue, and it's annoying the crap out of me.
Yeah,
there's yeah.
So
I'll post in the comments when I figure it out.
We can talk foreign movies for several episodes to come. So if you guys have any specific subgenres you would like to hear me and Caleb wax nostalgic about, or even suggestions of some foreign movies that we should watch, we would love to hear from you on that. And also make sure that you guys are sharing the content. If you're enjoying it, help us get the word out. We could appreciate it. And you are the reason why we do this. Otherwise, we're just kind of talking to ourselves, which not really talking to ourselves. When I do the reviews by myself, I'm so used to saying that. But yeah, if you do want to continue,
we're talking amongst ourselves. I guess you're close enough.
That's fair. Yeah. Just so I don't know. I think that something that we should do coming up is maybe I don't know, Hong Kong action movies. Maybe I'm trying to think of what some other big ones is. British gangster movies. I mean, there's so many different directions that we could go.
If you're going to talk Hong Kong action movies, I mean, I could talk for probably 4 hours alone. Like, I've seen thousands of Hong Kong action movies. I'm going to send you a list of some ones that you need to watch, which, like Dog Bite Dog is freaking phenomenal. Sha Po Long. Like, I can just rattle these off for days.
And then I love kaiju movies. So that's another kind of crazy subgenre.
Damajin, have you Damajin? That's kind of a horror film. Have you ever seen that?
No, I haven't.
It's where a giant statue comes to life. It's an interesting film. It's like a horror, feudal Japan. It's a different type of film.
Yeah, leave a couple down in the comment sections once we get done here. That way some people can go and check it out. And I wanted to also let every listener know that if you want a little sample of what each of these different Asian countries have to offer, there is a trilogy. No, not a trilogy, anthology called Three Extremes. It features a segment by a Japanese filmmaker, a Chinese filmmaker, and a South Korean filmmaker. Obviously, they don't represent the entire genre of each place, but it'll kind of give you an idea about what you're getting into with each. So Three Extremes, I think there's actually a sequel to that as well.
I've seen Three Extremes. Yeah, that's a deep cut. I thought I was probably the only person who's seen that.
Yeah, man, Dumplings is a fucked up segment.
Dumpling is by far the standout for me.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right, well, thank you guys so much for stopping by to check out this edition of Movies Are Terrible. Make sure that you head over to Caleb Says Stuff on YouTube and subscribe, as well as check him out on Twitter. Follow me at Jeremy B. Terrible, and here at Movies Are Terrible on YouTube. Also, head over and like Be Terrible Productions on Facebook. Again, thank you guys so much for coming by. We'd love to hear from you down in the comments section, so leave it. And until next time, on behalf of me and Caleb, I'm Jeremy. Be terrible.